Hello, and welcome to the KCSA Mental Health Virtual Investor Conference. My name is Allison Sauce, and on behalf of KCSA Strategic Communications, as well as our co-host OTC Markets Group, we're very pleased you have joined us for our first live presentation from Orexo. Before I introduce our speaker, a few points to note. Please submit your questions in the question box to the left of the slides. If you're interested in scheduling a meeting with Orexo, please click on the Meetings tab found on the left navigation bar. You will be able to view the company's availability and submit a meeting request. On a final note, all of today's presentations will be recorded and available for 24/7 replay. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Nikolaj Sørensen, President and CEO of Orexo, which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol ORXOY and on the Nasdaq under the symbol ORX. Welcome, Nikolaj.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you in the US and good afternoon to you, those of you following me from Europe. So I'm here to present Orexo, a pharmaceutical and digital therapeutics company with a very strong focus on opioid use disorder and mental illness. A little short about the company. Today, the company is resting on three legs. We have our US pharmaceutical operations, where we have our commercial operations in the headquarter in Morristown, New Jersey, where we're selling our product Zubsolv for treatment of opioid use disorder all over the US. We've been present in the US since 2013, and today most of our staff are all located in the US. We also have our headquarter and pipeline, which as a Swedish-based company, we are located a little north of Stockholm in a town called Uppsala. And that's where we do our development of new pharmaceuticals. The closest one to market is a product called OX124, which is a naloxone overdose rescue medication, which is based on a completely new technology we call AmorphOX, where we see we can apply that to a multitude of different APIs or new pharmaceutical formulations. Then finally, we also have a new leg where we're moving into digital therapies, because we see digital therapies are a very strong complement to the pharmaceuticals that we have in opioid use disorder, but we see in the overall mental health space that digital therapies can be an excellent complement to existing care. And we've seen in several clinical trials how it can actually improve treatment outcome for a lot of patients. So a little about where are we, what's the focus on Orexo? So today, the big focus on us and where we start from is opioid use disorder. And that is based on the product Zubsolv, which is a buprenorphine naloxone product that we sell, as I said, in the US, and just about to launch in Europe together with a partner called Accord Pharma. A couple of years back, we saw that most of the patients were not having access to appropriate counseling. So when you're treating for opioid use disorder, one is that you're treating with a pharmaceutical for the symptoms, but if you really want to have a sustained effect, you need to work on your behavior and try and how you can stay abstinent and not relapse into opioid use disorder. And that's where we found a big gap in the US market and decided to develop a product called Modia for treatment of as a complement to Zubsolv for treatment of opioid use disorder, where you basically see a patient can get the medication Zubsolv together with Modia, the digital therapy. We have also seen that the number of people overdosing in the US have reached all-time new levels, high levels, with more than 100,000 people dying in 2021. With the majority of these dying from opioid overdose, and in particular from fentanyl. 89% of those dying from opioid overdose are dying from fentanyl overdose. And for that, we were setting out on a new development program where we were focusing on developing something that was stronger and faster acting than the existing products in the market. And we've succeeded with that with OX124, which we are soon getting ready to file in the US. Out of the development of OX124, we had to develop a new technology to improve the speed of action of the product. And now we have applied that to some new other APIs, so other active ingredients in the pharmaceuticals, and I've seen it have equal effect, for example, in epinephrine, which you're using when you get an allergic shock. But we've even seen that it's very applicable also to a lot of biological products where you can move from injection to potentially a nasal spray. When it comes to digital therapies, There are two types of digital therapies today. A lot of the pharma companies are giving away the digital therapy as a complement to the pharmaceuticals. But we find that if we really need to develop the state-of-the-art digital therapy, which can stand on its own leg, we are looking to do something where we need to set a price, because we need to finance clinical trials where we're showing that the products are actually providing real value and not just as a supporting tool to the pharmaceutical. Looking into that market, we see that it's in its infancy, but we need to find ways to distribute, to get reimbursement to work, basically to get the payment process and the distribution of the product to the patients to work. So we've developed a platform for that. And in that platform, we see an opportunity to expand into other mental health. So we now have two other digital therapies, one for alcohol misuse and one for depression. So today, Orexo is focused around opioid use disorder, but we are, you can say, branching into a new product development platform called AmorphOX, but we're also using our distribution and reimbursement platform to add on more digital therapies for mental health. If you look at Orexo today, we have a pipeline of 3 pharmaceuticals generating revenues today. Zubsolv is the main one. We have 2 smaller ones, Abstral and Edluar. Abstral for cancer pain treatment, Edluar for insomnia. And then we have the pipeline where most of the products are based on AmorphOX. And I will come back to those a little later. The ambition of the ORX124, as you can see, has a little flag Q4 2022. So we're only a few weeks away from the end of 2022. And the ambition is to file this year, but we are waiting for some input from FDA that we need to include in the file, and we have not received that yet. So the clock is ticking a little for the Q4 deadline, but if it's not going to be Q4, it's going to be very early in Q1. Then we have our digital therapies where we have Modia, Vorvida, and Deprexis, and I will come back to the main products on this list shortly. So today, if you look at the focus for Orexo, it's opioid use disorder, an area where we unfortunately see a spike in the number of people overdosing, in particular in the US. But if you're looking at a global scale, this is something that is a problem also in Europe, of course, but also in a lot of developing countries. But just homing in on the US market, we know today there's somewhere between 8 and 13 million people misusing opioids. We know that only about 1/10 of these people are in treatment today. So there's a massive population of untreatment and lack of improved treatment. By coming in with a portfolio of products, Zubsolv, Modia, and ORX124, we feel we are very well positioned to be a leader in this field. In alcohol management, it's similar numbers. Today, we have about 17 million in the US who are heavy alcohol users. But again, about only 1/10 of the patients are in treatment. And little the same numbers for depression. Today, this is actually a few years back, before COVID, we had about 20 million in the US who were having some kind of major depressive disorder annually, and only about half of them are in treatment. So mental health and particular misuse is an area where there's a significant need for new solutions and, of course, growth opportunities for companies like Orexo. So Zubsolv is the foundation for the company. We are acting in a market which is dominated today by generic alternatives, but even in that environment, we have been very successful of expanding market access. So for example, both New York and Kentucky, Medicaid added on Zubsolv to their formulary during the last year. If you look a little historically, and you can see that on the graph to the right, we had the peak sales was in 2019. And that was really the year when we saw our main competitor, Suboxone, lost exclusivity, and we had a pretty big stream of new generics entering the market, which meant that we were losing some exclusive contracts we had with United Health Group and Humana. We are still reimbursed by both United Health Group and Humana, but we're not exclusive anymore. And that costed this decline that you can see from 2019. Now in 2022, what you can see in the graph is it looks like an increase. That is some foreign exchange we are reporting in Swedish krona. In US dollars, we have seen a decline in 22 compared to 21. But if you look quarter over quarter, we have a very stable situation in 2022. We have seen a market that before COVID were growing double digit, but during COVID has actually went down to about a single digit, around 5% growth. There are two reasons for this. One, during COVID, we saw an increase in relapse. We saw a lot of doctors were not taking in new patients, so it was more difficult to access treatment. This is getting better, but what we've also seen, unfortunately, is the expansion of fentanyl being part of most people's misuse. And fentanyl is something that a lot of doctors find much more difficult to treat. So while we see a lot of patients coming into treatment, we unfortunately also see more patients relapsing, which is impacting negatively on the growth. You can say before we had most patients on average have somewhere between 6 to 9 months treatment. Today we see a much higher, a much shorter average treatment time because many more patients are failing in the early stages of treatment because fentanyl is more hard to treat. Then when we come to digital health, which is again the complement we have to Zubsolv, is MODIA. We are aiming at products that we can sell, just like a pharmaceutical that we can get prescribed by the doctor and be applied to the patients. But this is a market where we have no established reimbursement system. There are some reimbursement codes coming out, but it is an area which is still in a very early stage. So one is that we have some codes that now seems to be applicable to digital therapies, but we also need to have the healthcare system and the doctors to utilize these codes. So I see this digital health space is something where there's a significant opportunity long term, but short term, there are some hurdles that needs to be addressed. And it's in particular around the reimbursement distribution system that we need to address. For Orexo, we are approaching the market with 3 products: MODIA for opioid use disorder, Vorvida for alcohol management, Deprexis for depression. The 2 first are 6 months treatment, the last one are 3 months treatment. For both Vorvida and Deprexis, there's a quite stellar scientific basis of clinical trials consistently showing improved results of using these digital therapies. For MODIA, we are running a 430 patient study at the moment that we are having the last patient in October. So we're expecting to see the results sometimes during Q2 next year. Then to the AmorphOX platform. So our new development platform where we are using this, we developed this to develop OX124, so the rescue medication. And if you look at the left, we have done multiple clinical trials, but the curve that you have here is actually the first study we did on our naloxone product where we compared to the market leader Narcan. And these are actually the same dose in different formulations. So AmorphOX, OX124, you can see a much more rapid uptake than Narcan, which is the green curve, where it's slower. And for most of the time, you will have less exposure to naloxone. This is important because when you have fentanyl is longer, it's longer acting, so you need to have more naloxone in the blood for a longer period of time. But of course, also fentanyl is giving you a much higher risk of overdosing and dying. So have something that works faster is incredibly important. The other part that is important is to have a product that is stable when you need it. And that's, of course, not only for naloxone, but for a lot of other products. And what we have seen in our studies is that the stability of the products, independent of temperatures, freezing or very warm, we have seen absolutely fantastic stability of the products, as you can see in the graph here also. And we see that this technology can now be applied on a multitude of different APIs. And we've tested in both peptides, in proteins, that would say vaccines, where we have seen that adding these molecules into AmorphOX, we have seen significantly improved stability of the products. And we could even see that we could move some of these biologics from injection to nasal delivery. OX124 and OX125, both of them very related. One is naloxone, the other one is nalmefene. We decided to focus on OX124 first because most of the work we're doing is also applicable for OX125. It's unfortunately a very significant market and growing because we see more and more people overdosing as there is increased access to synthetic opioids like fentanyl. We are expecting, or we are targeting, a filing date with OX124 with the FDA in Q4. So we're only a few weeks away. But here I must highlight that we need some critical feedback from the FDA that was due several months ago and which now is significantly overdue. And we need that to be a part of the file and to build into the file. And we have not received that yet. So it's a little on the hair whether we can make it into Q4 or it will be early January. What I'm pleased to say is that all of the internal data we need for the file is in place. So what we're actually waiting right now for is external input, in particular from FDA. We also have used the same technology for OX640, which is an epinephrine product. So this is basically moving from EpiPen into a nasal spray. And we have the same advantages as we have seen with OX124. When you have a nasal spray, it's needle-free, but it's also very, very stable. And this is one of the issues with EpiPen and similar epinephrine products, is that the products are unstable in cold and warm temperatures. But of course, if you're out hiking or if you're out skiing, you are multi-allergic, you want to be sure that you have a product that works independent of temperature. And this is where we think we have a real differentiation with OX640, not only compared to the injection products, but also some of the other nasal sprays that are on the way into this market. A very big market, $4 billion on a global market size. About half of it is in the US, with a pretty good growth rate also. And as you can see here for OX640, this is actually the right dimensions comparing these two products, the nasal spray OX640 compared to EpiPen. And if you're multi-allergic, you would know that you need to carry these products around in wherever you go. And that's, of course, a challenge. If you can't have it in, for example, if you need to leave it in the car when it's very warm, you're out in a hot summer day, or you're out in a very cold winter day, which definitely is the case in Sweden just today. And as you can see on the left, the stability, and what we have here is actually an accelerated stability. So that means we have stored the product in 40 degrees heat, which is outside the scope of EpiPen, which needs to be stored in room temperature. But to show the difference, you can see here that after 6 months, about 25% of the EpiPen has disappeared, whereas only 0.7% of OX640 have disappeared. After 18 months, we still only see 2% degradation of OX640. So very important for people who are allergic that you have a product that works when you need it. If you look at the financial situation for Orexo, we have, if you look at the last 12 months, revenue of about $56 million, applying today's exchange rate. The dollar have strengthened a little compared to the Swedish krona over the last year. Most of this is coming from the US, where we have about $52 million in revenues. So about 90% of our revenues is from our US pharma and particular sale of Zubsolv. The EBITDA, the last 12 months is minus $10 million. What we have done during the last 10 months is that we have invested quite heavily in a clinical trial for MODIA, the digital therapy, building up the reimbursement platform for our digital therapies and evolving that market together with partners. We're working together with Trinity Health in North Dakota, and we also now have reimbursement for Veteran Affairs. And we need to build the infrastructure to distribute and get reimbursement from these customers. And then we, of course, have developed OX124. In the same time. So these investments are coming into the negative EBITDA. But if you just look at our US pharma business, it is generating on an annual basis close to $30 million in EBIT. So we have a very positive contribution from our US business. Today, the cash position is about $41 million, and we have an EBIT margin from the US business of 54%. I would need to say that we have a corporate bond issued in Sweden of about $50 million. So right now we have a negative net cash position. But if you deduct these one-time investments in the MODIA study, in the distribution platform for digital therapies, and from the clinic, the OX124 investments, and finally also some legal expenses that we have right now, we are positive on an EBITDA level. So we are in this short-term investment period for the company. And we today, if you look at the company, we have good ambitions on focus on securing our financial position, and the first half of next year, 2023, is likely to require continued investment. But when we come into the second half, we definitely have the choice to turn the company profitable if we decide not to invest heavily into any new projects. With that said, I'm very close to the finish of the presentation. I actually just want to highlight one thing. I didn't mention the legal processes we have, and just for full disclosure, we have a patent litigation ongoing for Zubsolv, where we have a district court date set in the end of January next year. And we also have some issues with a subpoena or some cost associated with a subpoena that was issued on the company several years ago. Does not happen anything, but it does drag a little expenses for the company. So why would you invest in Orexo? I think we are a company who have a corporate profitability in sight. It's in our own hands. If we decide not to invest in new development programs, or you can say the later stage of new development programs, when we stop the MODIA study, which automatically will have an end date during Q2 next year, we are in a position where we can basically focus our business on profitability and reach that level. We could also make a decision to continue to invest in, for example, ORX640, but this is really in our own hands. So we have a control of our financial situation. When we look at Zubsolv sales, we know that only about 1/10 of the patients in opioid use disorder are in treatment right now. And we see a significant flow of money coming into this business as these opioid litigation processes are now getting to an end. We know by today that $54 billion have been settled in these opioid litigations in the US, which will now get into the States and be earmarked to be used for treatment of opioid use disorder, prevention of opioid use disorder, and also some criminal activities to avoid the distribution of illicit drugs. We have digital therapies where we are working with Trinity Health. We are working with the VA. We are getting our reimbursement model confirmed at the moment. We see some good momentum on both MODIA and Trinity Health to get the reimbursement confirmed by the payers on real patients. And that will enable us with a kickstart here in Q4 to move into next year and build out. But I will say that this reimbursement model is a hurdle still. And where we need to work now is to get patients confirmed from different insurance companies to ensure that we get that reimbursement working before we can expand broadly. So don't expect any significant revenues for DTX this year, and we will see it build as we get this reimbursement in place during next year. R&D pipeline, OX124, as I said, we are ready from an Orexo perspective to file here in Q4, but we do need input from FDA to be able to meet this deadline. And if we don't have the documents in place in time, we are looking at an early Q1 filing in the US. ORX640 and AmorphOX, we have several partnering discussions ongoing for both ORX640, but also for companies who are interested in using our drug delivery platform, AmorphOX, for their APIs, or for some of the APIs that we have tested in the platform that are relevant for their pipeline. With that, I will open up for questions and thank you for your attention. And I can see that I have received some questions here. We have one here. Are there funds available from the large opioid settlements in the US to support underwrite Zubsolv or Orexo solutions? There are definitely funds, and we are working with our entire pipeline, both our digital therapies with Zubsolv, the treatment, and also we're looking at how we, over time, when we get OX124 to market, can use these opioid settlement funds to support our business. And we have made applications for grants because that's the initial distribution of these funds is through a grant solution. And we have filed applications in some states in the US. Can you speak to your sales channels and resources in the US? So today we have our commercial organization in the US is just about 40 people or 40 sales reps, and we have a sales management infrastructure. We have a market access team, and in total in the US, digital therapy and US pharma, we are about 80 people in the US. So what are your key milestones for 2023? One key milestone is definitely the approval of OX124 in the US with the filing, even whether it's now in December or in January, we will still have the approval next year. It will be on the pharma side. If we continue in the pharma development, it would be how we can find partners for the AmorphOX platform, potential also for OX640. When we come to our digital therapies, we have the MODIA study, the digital therapy for opioid use disorder. It is marketed today under something called emergency use authorization that we got from the FDA, but we want to have a full regulatory approval from the FDA. And for that, we need our clinical trial, which is reading out during Q2. So that will be a very important milestone also. And then if you can say on the little more negative side, we have our the first district court decision in the opioid on the generic, the patent litigation for Zubsolv, I'm sorry. So the patent litigation we have together with a company called Sun Pharmaceuticals, who have made a generic version of Zubsolv, is due in the district court in end of January. That will come with a decision during the summer. I will say that we have been in a district court battle about those patents before, and that was against Teva Actavis, and we actually prevailed in the federal court. So I feel quite comfortable about our IP protection around Zubsolv, but of course any district court process is associated with a risk. So do we have any further questions? Otherwise, I am very pleased that you took your time to listen to the Orexo story. I think I, together with my entire US team, see there's so much need for improved treatment solution, in particular in opioid use disorder. But even when we expand to the mental health issue, it's something that needs new treatment solutions. And I'm sure that digital therapies is going to be a very important instrument in treating this patient population. And here Orexo is one of the players who's leading that effort. We have today agreements with Trinity Health. We have agreement with the Veteran Affairs for Deprexis, for example, which we're implementing at the moment. And then, of course, we have a quite exciting pipeline. So I hope all of you found this interesting, and thank you